some dinner?
Of course.
I think so. I mean, you might want to just be sure you're on mute, probably, right? So we're not hearing your pots and pans clank around. It's good to see you, though, April. It's been a while.
I'm going to be eating dinner too.
Okay, yeah. So just.
Oh,
I
What'd you say?
know. Yeah.
I'm going to
Alice?
be eating too.
Yeah.
Well,
it's dinner time.
I know, right? It's that time. All right. So we are live on Facebook, which is exciting. It looks like it's working well. Excellent. Oh, wow. And there's even captions that are showing up on Facebook, which is just kind of wild to me. So that's exciting. So welcome everyone. I am so excited to be hosting this and so excited to be having this juicy conversation with Marie, and it's really grateful. So yeah, this is Marie. She's next to me. I don't know where she is on everyone else's screen, up or down. And then in diagonal from me, this is Carly. Hi, Carly. Carly's going to be asking us some questions as we go through and just helping to facilitate some juicy and hopefully enlightening conversation. I'm sure we'll all have maybe some aha moments as we go through and just delve into this. So I'll just say a little bit about why I was so interested in hosting this and having this conversation with Marie, and then I'll pass it over to Marie to say a little bit about what prompted her to get into this juicy area of research, and then we'll just go into whatever questions sort of naturally pop up. So for me, this the state of compersion, or the I don't know if it's an emotion or a state or an action or what you would really describe it as. Maybe Marie can further elucidate that. But for me, just the experience of it, I've noticed is really a good indicator for how well resourced I am at any moment. So how self-connected I am, how kind of grounded, how settled, and how convinced I am in any moment that the universe really has my back. And so I've noticed that when I'm feeling like really good about myself, really confident, really nourished, that it is so easy for me to experience this joy when, my loved ones have joy in their lives. Even forms of joy that are maybe a little more inaccessible sometimes, such as the joy when a lover or a partner might be connecting with someone else. And, an experience that might otherwise provoke jealousy or a little feeling of being rattled. But when I'm feeling nourished, I have this sense of abundance and confidence and security. So as I noticed that, it made me more curious to kind of track this state of compersion and to learn more about it. And so when I found out that Marie had written a whole PhD thesis on this, or dissertation on it, I was like, well, let's find out more. Plus, I just enjoy talking to Marie, and I think she and we often are interested in really similar things. And so I was like, oh, let's get together and talk about this, and specifically unpack what we can learn about how this state of compersion might be able to guide us spiritually and help inform our journeys to get closer to the divine and to the transcendent in our lives. So that's my share about it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marie. Tell us about how your journey with this has been.
Yes, thank you so much. That was such a great intro. Coming from a place of using compersion as a bit of a barometer in terms of how connected you are to yourself and to the universe as a whole. which then leads to the spirituality of compersion, which is so fascinating, like the transcendent and feeling like there can be such a state of connection and in a way like merging with another human being in a way where their joy can be our joy too.
Mhm.
And what does it take to go into that kind of state? So to answer your question also, like it's not really just a state or it's not really just an emotion. I mean, right now the definition is pretty fluid because the word compersion is not in the dictionary yet.
Oh,
So it
really?
is,
Mhm.
no, I've actually emailed the Merriam-Webster a couple of times
Oh my God, I
to
love
tell
that.
them that they should have compersion in the dictionary. And they said no, they said not yet because it's not widely used enough.
Huh.
That's kind of how the editors decide when a word makes it to the dictionary. Like, for
Oh,
example, like to
fascinating.
tweet something, on Twitter. That's in the dictionary because people are using
Really?
it a bunch. Stuff like that. Anyways, that's a bit of a parenthesis, but I think what I found in my research in terms of the definition is that people give it several meanings across the spectrum of emotions and thoughts and experiences. Basically, it's an experience.
Mm.
And what led me to want to, research and analyze compersion was first, I thought that there was such a gap in the literature around that theme, around that concept, and such a beautiful and magical concept. I mean, the fact that it's not in a dictionary, we don't have an English word for that, just says a lot. And the way that we use language really affects the way that we experience the world.
Mm.
When
Yeah.
we do have words to describe our emotions and our experiences, we're more likely to experience them. So
Mm.
the absence of that word in our lexicon, to me, is in a way, it's
Sorry, guys. I just realized we aren't recording and I meant to record it. So I'm recording.
oh,
now.
okay.
So, okay, keep
Should I
going. Assuming
backtrack
that's
a little
okay with
bit?
everyone. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
Okay, no
As
problem.
much as you feel comfortable backtracking.
Of course, of course. I mean, well, do you want to backtrack the intro too, or
Nah,
no?
because the whole thing is probably recorded on Facebook, but I'd love to get
Okay.
just like a copy that's on my computer on Zoom. So from here.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
keep
No
going. I
problem.
think it's fine.
Okay. So basically, I was just starting to talk about why I decided to study compersion.
Mhm.
And that one of the reasons is that I saw a gap, not only in the academic literature, but more importantly, in the culture and in the spoken English language, with the word compersion not being in a dictionary. Um, and why do I think it's important? It kind of goes back to the definition of mudita. It's a Sanskrit word that is used in Buddhism. So Mudita, mudita.
Hmm.
For those who haven't heard it, it's basically compersion. It's sympathetic or empathic joy.
Hmm.
And it's considered in Buddhism one of the four qualities of the enlightened person.
Oh
So
wow.
it is
Hmm.
a highly spiritual concept. And the other three are compassion, equanimity, and loving kindness. And the significance of mudita, or shared joy, is that it remedies the illusion of separateness between
Hmm.
us and other people.
Hmm.
It kind of signifies that we're in a different paradigm where it's not a zero sum game, like more for you is less for me, but in a win win situation where more for you is more for you for me because we're not actually separate. And that feels so significant. And um, what better terrain to study this than non-monogamous relationships where people are actually going into situations where, culturally speaking, we're not supposed to feel compersion, or we're not expected to feel
Mhm.
compersion. We're supposed to feel jealousy, or we're expected to feel jealousy when our partners enjoy sexual or romantic connection with somebody else. So it is really, in a way, a beautiful defiance to the cultural script that you know, we're all inhaling from the media, from different sources every day, that say that love is really finite and it's a zero-sum game. not just cultural script, but even, I think there is a biological inherited evolutionary component to jealousy that, I mean, that's a tricky thing because people always ask, like, well, is jealousy natural? Is monogamy natural? Is polyamory natural? And these are really complex questions. But when we think about evolution and where we are going as a species and the role of jealousy and possessiveness, evolutionarily speaking, are we at a moment in history where we might need to change our evolutionary strategy in order to even survive as a species? And I think the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
So sorry, that was a lot.
No,
That was great.
To talk about why I decided to study compersion.
That was great.
that actually leads to my first kind of question is do you see consensual non-monogamy and polyamory and experiencing compersion, do you see that as, well, within the poly world, there's a debate whether this is something you just are, like being gay or lesbian, or is it something like a muscle that you can develop, this compersion and ability to feel joy for your love, for your loves when they're with other lovers. So.
Yeah, good question. And I'm going to premise this by saying that what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to say is not just my own personal opinion or experience, but it's also based on my participants that I interviewed for this research. So it's, I'm speaking a bit on the behalf of many other people. And the consensus is that compersion can and is learned. It's not something that you're just born with. I mean, there are people who say that they feel like they were born non-monogamous with really like that as a rigid orientation, a little bit like someone is born, gay or feels like they are born gay. I mean, that's another debate. But with compersion, I think that it's not so much like you feel it or you don't feel it. Like people tend to feel it when the context is promoting of it. So you might have the same person who's consensually non-monogamous, very assured in their identity and their poly relationships, but might feel a lot of compersion towards one metamorph, towards one relationship that their partner is having, but not towards another one, because there's characteristics in that second relationship that might be, hindering compersion versus in the first relationship that is promoting compersion. So it's not like an on or off switch.
Thank you.
I love that. That there's something that feels really hopeful in me when I hear you say that compersion is learned, because I think, I have a lot of judgments towards myself when I don't experience compersion. And I'm not even talking about in romantic settings. I'm even just talking about like in moments where, a friend or a loved one does have something joyful happen to them. And I don't have that immediate welling up of like, good for you. And, maybe that's just because in that moment I'm already feeling contracted or anxious about something else, or my attention's somewhere else. But I do have this script that God knows where it came from, but this like script of like that I should be feeling this empathic joy. And sometimes it just isn't happening for whatever reason. So the idea of it being kind of like a muscle and something that can be learned, like it just kind of relaxes my system and reassures me that we're working on it. It's coming.
Yeah. And really, I don't think it's always possible to feel compersion in every situation.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yes.
I mean, there's things that can really make it not possible. Like, if you don't have if you don't have a great day and you didn't sleep well and everything seems to be going awry in your day, first of all, it's going to be a lot more difficult to feel happy for somebody else who's having a great day. It's not impossible. And yes, we can work on that muscle, but we also have to give ourselves a break and say, like, it's not always going to be possible. But at the relational level too, like if there's abuse or if there's not, disclosure of something, if there's secrecy, let's say in an intimate relationship, and there's more or less like a cheating situation, then, why would you expect to feel compersion when you don't even feel included in what's happening. So
Yeah.
there's so many factors that can hinder compersion, and I don't think we should feel that we need to feel compersion in order to be a good person.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Actually, one of my things I wanted, it's connected to what you just said, Marie, is in your research, did you find that people in poly relationships who actually met their metamorphs, the metamor is the partner of my partner. So the metamor is the love that I'm not connected to, but my love is connected to. Did your research say anything about whether actually meeting those people in person or getting to know them versus having them just be, sometimes there's like a don't ask, don't tell policy where people can just have an open relationship. Does that impact compersion or?
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, everyone wants a different level of contact and exposure. So I think it's important to know, like, okay, like what feels good in my body in this situation. But generally speaking, compersion is about feeling included in somebody else's joy. And the more we can actually feel included by having a positive relationship with everyone involved, that will promote compersion. And like if, for example, like I had one participant who was telling me that her husband, had two different lovers, and in the one case they had dinner parties together, they hung out. When her husband and this other lover had a date, they would like send her some croissants to be delivered at home, like they would make her feel included in this, and she had absolute compersion. But then her husband had another lover where like she was feeling weird about polyamory and she didn't really want to meet her. She was actually avoiding meeting her, and then there was no compersion because it made her feel like, well, this woman doesn't even want me to exist.
Right.
There's this feeling of exclusion and separation that makes it almost impossible to feel happy with or happy for.
Yeah. Love that about
Yeah.
the importance of inclusion. It's really interesting. And how there can be so many different strategies for, including people. Like it can be as simple as a conversation, or it can be that, being in physical proximity to one another, or like what does that inclusion and consideration look like? And because I think it's a little different depending on the dynamic and the people involved. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for people who might come from a monogamous relationship where they feel a high level of threat, it might be wiser to not shoot for compersion right away, but shoot for neutrality and tolerance. And that might not come from like meeting a metamor right away face to face. Maybe there needs to be a progression there. I mean, it's really unique what people need to get accustomed to a certain mode of relating that they're not accustomed to.
Yeah.
So there's not really a universal recipe.
And I'm so interested in this practice too for non-poly situations, like just for like, day-to-day situations with friends and family and just regular loved ones. And, which I think is like kind of the like, entry level compersion, right? Of like practicing there. And then potentially building up, like if we are in a poly situation where then we can then apply it there. But it seems like it's such a great practice for all areas of life. And so as I hear you talking about the importance of including people in it, I'm thinking about how when someone we love experiences joy, that it's kind of up to us to include ourselves in that joy, right? And to remind ourselves that, like, what did you say at the beginning about how compersion is one of the spiritual concepts that helps remove separation and reminds us that unity is the reality, or is the ground that holds us all together. And so when we include ourselves in that person's joy, instead of receiving that joy as like a separation, it, you know, it builds in that reality that we would all, or at least that I would like to be creating more in my world of
Mm.
this like ground of unity.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
You know, I was at a birthday party a few weeks ago and I had an experience of jealousy,
Mm.
which kind of made me think about, okay, can I create compersion in this moment or invite
Mm.
more of it? I was jealous of the person who was kind of at the center of attention. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, like I do have a choice. Like it's almost like I saw the little angel and the little devil, you know, over my head fighting it off. And my little devil, maybe I'll call it my ego, saying like, oh, how come, I haven't gotten like a nice birthday party like this, right?
Mm.
And I was envious on the one hand. And then there was a part of me that just was so enthralled by the love that was there and that she was receiving and at the center of, but that I was participating in and I could participate more wholeheartedly because I do love this person. And it was so interesting to observe, in this context, that didn't have anything sexual or romantic about it, but more about just something that I realized also that I wanted to create more of in my life.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
a bit of a flashlight, like, oh wow, maybe I want to create more parties and events where I feel like I can be in the center of things or just even create more love or create something more that I obviously am feeling a little bit deprived about. So
Yes.
using compersion or the lack thereof as a flashlight
Yes. Yes.
is like my
Yes.
philosophy really in a nutshell.
Yes. This has exactly been my observation about jealousy or envy, that when I experience it, it is like a flashlight, but it's a flashlight with a very sharp point. You know? It's like a laser pointer, right? Where it really, and is not a, doesn't always feel good. It never feels good, let's be honest, but it's so precise. Like if you're willing to lean into the pain of it, it shows you exactly what it is that you're wanting and needing if you're
Mhm.
willing to like look at like what it's really pointing to,
Mhm.
and then perhaps find a way to give yourself that thing that you're wanting and needing, which is usually where we get in the way, right? Because for whatever reason we're not ready, or we haven't been open to receiving that thing that we're wanting to give ourselves.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so jealousy points to that blockage that we've put up for whatever reason of like why we can't have that, or it's not in our lives, or
Mhm. Mhm.
a very carefully defended block of some kind.
Yeah, yeah, carefully defended. I like that. It's true.
Yeah.
It can be so tender.
Yes, so tender. That's exactly what I was going to say next. Yeah.
Mm.
Tender.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. A place where
Maria.
laser pointers don't feel so good.
I-
usually.
Yes.
Go ahead, Carly.
This kind of makes me wonder about, I was really intrigued by, in the description for this event tonight, the phrase alchemizing jealousy into desire, like way you talk about in your dissertation, ways to actually somehow transform this jealousy into maybe sexual desire. So I just would be
Mhm.
curious to hear a little bit more about that process.
Yes, yes. And that is something that a lot of my research participants talked about, that they could feel that sometimes like the energy of jealousy
Mm,
was so close energetically to the energy of turn on.
yes.
Oh,
And that
wow.
there was almost like a gateway there in terms of that, activation, that raw sensation of like hotness that could be in a way like interpreted by the mind as either like, oh, this is bad, I'm being excluded from this, I am not going to have enough for myself, or oh my gosh, if I include myself in this, if I can ride on this hotness that's happening, I can translate that into sexual desire. And the jealousy can become not this heavy existential threat, but even this activation, like seeing your partner also through a third person gaze.
Mhm.
It can be activating in terms of like, oh, there's another person who desires my partner. But then it's also this really erotic space of like, oh, there's another person who desires my partner. I want to claim them and participate in that sexual energy that's happening there. So the line between jealousy and compersion can be fuzzy.
Mhm.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
just sometimes knowing that compersion is even a possibility or putting chances on our side can help, cross from one to the other or even shift a little bit of the ratio because it's not necessarily like either or. That's another thing about compersion slash jealousy. It's not you either have one or you have the other. It can coexist and often
I love
does.
that. Yeah.
So shifting the ratio can make it into, a better experience, less of a threat, but more of an activation, more of a sense of aliveness in all the directions.
Yeah. I love that, shifting the ratio. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes that's what it takes to feel like, oh wow, like life is not against me, or this relationship or this person is not against me. It's actually okay. It's something that has a sharp edge of pain, but it's not like a bad thing. It's not an
Mm.
existential threat.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm wondering, my go-to video to explain consensual non-monogamy, there's a woman, a therapist in that video who talks about how she's wondering why it seems to be that more people are practicing polyamory and consensual non-monogamy. And her suggestion is that one factor is basically women have more financial independence and more equality within relationships. And it actually, I have this question to ask that's a little bit, I don't know. My question is, when I've talked about consensual non-monogamy or polyamory publicly on Facebook or with my friends,
Mhm.
sometimes I get some pushback from some people who talk about polygamy. Polygamy is the most common form of, you know, multi-partner relationships.
Mhm.
And they see it, and I think justifiably so, as being kind of coercive non-monogamy. So I'm just wondering if there's any research or talk about compersion within polygamous situations. Because, for example, like, in some cultures, a man could have multiple wives, and
Mhm.
the wife doesn't really have a choice about the new wife coming into the situation.
Mhm.
But I'd imagine that compersion does arise in those situations too. So
Yeah, what a fascinating question. I've never really been asked that. And I just had a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were actually kind of speculating because neither of us has been in that situation. But I'm sure both might arise, both the jealousy, but also the compersion of feeling that maybe the you don't have the pressure of fulfilling the other person's needs 100%. That is one of the factors that often
absolutely.
come up as facilitating compersion is feeling a relief from that pressure. And I would imagine, if you're one of a few wives, then you don't have to do all the work, or you might have also a sense of, sisterhood and um, ultimately potentially friendship with some people. I'm not glamorizing this
Of
situation
course,
at
yeah,
all,
yeah.
but I would be surprised if there was no compersion at all.
Mhm.
In addition to, I'm sure, possessiveness and jealousy and
Mhm.
disappointment and all the other emotions. So, I mean, I don't know. I haven't researched that particularly, and I think it would be fascinating
Yeah.
to do some interviews and actually research that. Because I mean, in a typical polyamorous situation with gender equality, you know, you would assume that you need that kind of equality to feel compersive.
For me, like when I think about I feel like this might be saying a little too harshly, but some forms of that are of polygamy would be non-consensual non-monogamy
Mhm.
versus when you're in consensual non-monogamy, I would imagine that hopefully, I don't know, that the compersion is more.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
what draws you to it in a way. So
Right, right. Yeah. And there's cultures where they practice polyandry, which
right,
is,
yes.
one man, I mean, one
Multiple husbands.
woman with multiple husbands, and oftentimes it's going to be brothers marrying the same woman, like in Tibet, I believe.
Yeah, there's a
There's
pretty
still a lot of rural cultures that practice polyandry, and I dare to imagine that when it is so anchored in the culture, there is a sense that um, I don't know. I guess I don't really want to speculate. I feel like that's a slippery slope.
yeah, I hear you. Sorry.
I hope they're doing okay.
Right. I'm curious, for your dissertation, you interviewed a certain number of people who engage in consensual monogamy. So were
Mm,
they from a certain, like, how did you find them, or how did you,
mhm.
what
Well, they
was
were
that process?
all, within North America, actually.
Mhm.
So it was, modern Western culture,
Yeah.
polyamory, and I found them through a few different listservs, like my university listserv, the polyamory researchers listserv, which has some therapists and some researchers on it who then, shared with some of their clients and connections. So there was definitely a bias in my sample towards well educated, kind of middle to upper class folks in rich countries,
Yeah.
basically. So it was not really a multicultural study, unfortunately. I think it would be so wonderful to do a bigger study with different cultures and how they feel about compersion and monogamy and non monogamy. But mine was more of a foundational study about how do people in these contexts, more like, I mean, not really traditional, but more of a like a classic, what we think of polyamory context, experience compersion.
I'm actually wondering about also thinking about in some arrangements within consensual non-monogamy, there's kind of a hierarchy structure within, and you have a nesting you could have a nesting partner, and then out have a kind of open relationship with that. And I'm wondering if those kind of hierarchical different kinds of structures within consensual non-monogamy,
Mm-hmm.
if that
Yeah.
impacts the
That is also something I did not research specifically.
Mhm.
And that would be a super fun research design, actually. That would be one of the next studies I think that should be done is there more compersion going on, like in terms of when people are already in a nesting partnership and a primary partnership in different formats of relationships. So I don't know, but I did have several participants who were in primary partnerships tell me that because they felt really secure at their partnership to begin with, they were able to experience compersion. Versus if they were somebody's quote unquote secondary,
Right.
they had a harder time feeling as secure
That makes
in
sense.
the relationship
Yeah.
and as included. So,
Mhm.
on the other hand, though, I did have one participant who she didn't have a primary partnership, but she was with a man who was married, and she felt a lot of compersion towards this man's wife because she felt like, well, because she's on board, she's allowing us to spend time together. I would not be able to spend time with this man if she weren't already having a good enough relationship with her husband. So she had a lot of compersion for their relationship.
Yeah, that's
And I
beautiful.
think that, that's because she was really comfortable in
Mhm.
her role as, a secondary or, a non-primary relationship.
Mhm.
I think when people are getting what they want,
Exactly. It works,
They
right.
can feel compersion. But if they're in a situation where they're not getting what they want, then it's a lot harder. Like, do you feel like you have a full plate, or do you feel like your plate is empty and somebody else
Yes.
is taking things off of it?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. This is such a theme that I've been really noticing in myself. And, I just started, I'm teaching this online class through Body Electric called Awakening Eros that just started last night. And one of the things that we're really working on in that course is this shift from erotic scarcity to abundance, like just that like felt sense of erotic abundance in ourselves. And I've seen it in my own life so often, where I get to this like contracted place for whatever reason. And what a practice it is, and how much work sometimes it takes to just convince my cells that erotic abundance can happen and is possible. And, just, yeah. So, and I just think that the more we can create those experiences, I mean, I feel like sometimes it's a person by person thing, like each person has to find like what it takes to personally shift them, shift each of us into that felt sense. And group work, I think, can be really helpful. Actually, I think it's almost easier to shift people from scarcity to abundance when we are in a group together. And one theory for that, I think this is like a Brené Brown kind of concept, that the shame and the scarcity gets installed
Right.
in social situations, where we get told that we're not enough or we're not attractive or whatever. And so we need that group context in order to heal that, and to then give ourselves the other felt sense of like, there is enough. My needs can be met. I am loved. I am beautiful. I am worthy, whatever the things are that we really need to feel in order to be deeply convinced. Convinced isn't even the right word, but to deeply believe. And then to live from this place of abundance. Like, I know to some people that sounds like an impossibility. I mean, if you told me this like 10 years ago, I would have been like, that sounds great in theory, but like, really? Like, right? I mean, it's I think it's a tough, I don't want to say a tough sell, but it sounds a little idealistic. Yeah. So I don't know, what's y'all's experience with that shift? Like, what did it take to shift you? Because I feel like it's so part of this compersion experience, right?
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I'm so curious about how you teach it in your workshop. Like, what is the practice that you're teaching?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's one practice. I think it's like it's like a layered experience of it. Yeah, I don't know. Let's come back to that question.
Okay, cool. I'll let Carly go first.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, so my experience with compersion particularly was around my longest term love, who I was telling Marie and Sarah, I call him my comet love because he lives across the ocean. We've been in a relationship for 4 years, and he's the one who supported me in becoming polyamorous. Like when I traveled to meet him, and we're deeply in love, but life right now just doesn't allow us to spend a lot of time together. So he was like, you should look for a local lover. And I'm like, I'm in love with you. I don't want to look for a local lover. But we went on this path together. And I will say, when I first started, and I was very clear with my new partner in Cleveland, I'm in this other relationship. I'm trying this new thing of being polyamorous. But Gideon, my partner in Israel, like, even though he was the one who like encouraged me to do this, felt he actually described like these like waves, like just the jealousy he experienced when he knew I was with this other person was just so like cosmic waves. He described it like so intense. And I experienced that too as well when he found a a local love there in Israel. And it's only, this is where, for me, it seems pretty clear that this is kind of a muscle that can be developed, is, and just through the time and the experience that we've had in our relationship, we know we still love each other, even when each of us has other loves, and that the waves keep getting smaller and smaller and easier to handle through time and experience just seems to make it easier. So,
Mm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
And
much for
probably
sharing.
having the felt sense of, like, I think when we have the experience of having our needs met, even maybe when we are in that contracted state, or a little bit activated or triggered, and yet our needs are still being met, it kind of sends this somatic message to our nervous system that, like, it's okay, honey, it sort of starts to unwind those patterns. I think there's some
Right.
magic that happens there. So
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Right. Like I think that having the experience that counters the initial belief. Like I did have, a couple in my study that they talked about tolerance, which
Mm,
you build a level of tolerance where the first time, their partner went on a date with somebody else, they freaked
Right.
out, but then the partner came back to them and they were like, okay. Like the freak out basically is a voice saying like your partner is not ever coming back to you.
Right.
And once the reality is proven, to be
Mhm.
different time after time, then it gets easier and easier for your voice to not be able to say like every single time, your partner is gone forever. Like, no, like he came back 10 times, 20 times, 30 times.
Mhm.
It starts to shift because, I mean, there's a whole cultural script that is saying like, no, if your partner is going to go with somebody else once, they're gone.
Right.
yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm. So I can go back to this question that Marie asked about. I think it's a little bit off topic, but I can just it might wind us back to
Mhm.
compersion, about this shifting from scarcity to abundance, like, and how we teach it in a group setting. Um, Actually, and also how we just coach ourselves through that in just like day-to-day life, right? Like, I was just messaging with my sister about this, actually. And about, well, and actually, here I'll speak about something that's a little bit more relevant and immediate, which was an experience that I had with this recently, where I realized that one thing that really shifts me out of scarcity and into abundance is actually connection with other women, like deep,
Mm,
intimate connections with other women, more so than connections, like any kind of romantic connections, actually.
mm,
Which I don't really have an understanding of, like, why that is.
mhm,
Um, Maybe because it like, I don't know, on like in the hierarchy of the chakras or something, like it's like the base level of like belonging and ancestors, and it's like a really
Mm.
primal sense of connection to like the earth and grounding and that like feminine principle or something. But
mhm.
it's like deeply reassuring to me, and I think helps me to then feel more resourced and feel that abundance in my cells, I think.
Mm.
um and sometimes it's just as simple as like asking another woman to really hear me or see me, or even to tell me things that they appreciate about me, and to kind of feed back those things about myself, like ways that I want to be seen, and things that I remind me about things that I love about myself. Like, those kinds of conversations and connections can be can kind of scratch that itch
Mhm.
and fill up that tank of abundance, so that then it is easier to have more capacity for other people's joy, other people's experiences. So that's kind of on an individual level, and I think that's actually the same principle that we use in a workshop or like in a group setting, um, is providing exercises and structures where people do feel deeply seen.
Mhm.
So sometimes we do like mirroring exercises, or just experiences where people get to speak, and the other person is just literally sitting there and witnessing and holding space for them. um, a lot of touch exercises can really help us to feel seen and nourished, and again give us that like literal felt sense of being connected and that our needs will be met, from that like deeply reassuring state. So I think it's kind of layering on these different exercises that approach that mindset and felt sense of abundance from all different angles, so that it'll kind of seep into people's cells in different
Yeah.
ways.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a profound question. Like, how do we develop the sense of inner abundance that we need to navigate life and being part of society? I don't feel like I have like a dramatic moment to talk about that really helped me shift, but I feel like if I look at the arc of my life, when I grew up and I started going to school and high school, I compared myself so much with other people. It was such a, high school, it's like so ripe for comparison and feeling less than, and who's the most popular kid, who's not. And I was not a popular kid. I was the nerd and I was the reject. So I was very envious, very jealous of people who did have that social capital. And the only thing that helped me get out of that mindset and of that pain of jealousy and comparison was to actually find my own purpose and find my own
Mm,
unique individuality and go on a big life mission to, find myself spiritually. So right when I finished high school, I mean, I went to college for a couple of years. I, moved out of my parents' home. I moved out of my hometown, and I just kind of went on this journey. And after that, I went traveling, which is what ultimately brought me to California from Quebec.
ah,
And I just needed to find my people, first of all. I needed to find people who I felt like I could really be myself with. But I also needed to find a sense of spiritual connection within myself that made me feel like I belonged on the
mm,
planet. Like,
Mm.
it's just like a fundamental sense of okayness with being in a body. So it's really all encompassing for me, this journey of being able to not be in a state of constant like comparison and separation, but feeling like I belong here.
yeah.
And I think finding one's purpose and not feeling constrained by a certain life situation and being able to like go I mean, I think it looks so different for everyone, but
Yeah.
there is a sense of secure attachment within oneself and with the universe, which
Yeah.
you know we talked about at the very beginning, that
Mm,
to me is like a lifelong journey.
yeah. I love that secure attachment with the universe.
That's the hardest thing because the universe is not always nice to us.
Right. Oh, I'm so glad that you brought up, because I was wanting to bring it up earlier, this like competition and
Mhm.
comparison, and
Mhm.
how, I mean, because in so many ways, like that's really what we are working to heal and integrate, and find a way to navigate around. And so much of our culture and conditioning is around, I mean, look at, we're given like, think about how much in school, right? There's always competitions and rankings and grades and, all of the competition is such a big part of our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And especially, I think, competition amongst women is something that I don't know. I'm part of this this community, this Awakening Women community, and it's one thing that Shamali, the founder of that community, talks about a lot, and how about healing that, and bringing this sense of true sisterhood, and allowing that sense of competition to just creating a different reality where that's not just at all part of the resonance and the frequency. And yeah, and it's just something that I feel deeply. And whenever I host like a women's circle, that's something I always kind of conjure in myself, is that reality of, or that culture of, I don't want to say non-competition. I guess it's just the culture of abundance and acceptance, and, the opposite of the zero-sum game, where there isn't like, just because you're winning doesn't mean I lose. Yeah.
Right, right. And standing in our uniqueness, but also our togetherness. And it's like, I feel like it's a little bit paradoxical, like if we all feel that we can honor our own uniqueness and every person's uniqueness, then we're in a better place to feel not separate.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when we're trying to compare ourselves, like, oh wow, like, yeah, this one is prettier, this one has bigger boobs, this one is younger, like that's, that's kind of how we filter the world. Like when we really slow down our thoughts, like we've been taught to filter the world in terms of who's the most attractive person and who has social capital. It's so ingrained.
Yeah.
And, can we transcend that? Can we actually like go beyond that? And maybe that narrative is always going to happen in the background. Like when I observe my thoughts, I have that. I walk into a room and I do scan people and I make quick judgments, but can I not be a slave of that? Like I feel like I'm constantly training myself to like go towards people's humanity, go beyond that automatic judgment, especially if I feel jealous of them. Like to me, one of the quickest, most effective remedies to jealousy is get to know this person.
Yeah.
We're all human. We all have our, insecurities, and for me, that was my experience actually with getting to know some of Gideon's partners. My metamorphs was once I before I could see them, I'd imagine them, we're all human, and it just reassured me to know, I don't know, just that's seeing that put that in perspective. So
Yeah, to know the reality of this person instead of just this imagination that you had of the person, right?
Right.
Of this. Yeah, it's so easy, like in the absence of actual data and experience with the person,
what your mind
like,
imagines.
right? To like fill in the blanks with this, like all these, idealized characteristics perhaps, or whatever. Yeah, whatever you're filling in. So yeah. Yeah, as I was hearing you, Marie, talk about like how, how we do scan a room and, quickly assess maybe this hierarchy or the, where the kind of social capital exists in a room. It reminds me, one of my mentors speaks about this and really outs this as a phenomenon that happens. And to me, when he first started, when, speaking about this in a classroom setting, I was kind of like, oh my God, like we're really talking about this, because it's such a, it's a thing that we all just do, and maybe it comes
Mhm.
from that like reptilian, primal part of our brain of like, kind of mapping the social territory.
Mhm.
It comes from living in tribes and groups, and just kind of, you need to know who's in charge, right? And like where the power lies.
Yeah.
And your level of physical attractiveness is a form of power.
Mhm.
Structural,
Mhm.
I don't know, structural
Mhm.
power or social power or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, when he just first started talking about it, I was like, oh my God, we're really talking about this. And then the more I realized that it was like great to talk about it,
Mhm.
because it actually gave it less power
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
allowed me to be more at choice about how I was going to relate to it. So like,
Yeah.
both of you have said, getting to know that person, leaning into it, learning more about them, and sometimes learning in some ways the flip side of that gift that that person may have, which is then if you have a lot of social power, like physical attractiveness or whatever it is, or as this one teacher calls, he talks about it as your call, like when your
Mm.
call is very
Mhm.
strong.
Mhm. Mhm.
The shadow side, or the flip side of that, is that then you have to deal with a lot of people coming towards you, and you have to learn how to skillfully handle those interactions and handle all that energy. And then you start to wonder, are these people that are coming towards me because they really want to connect with me and my heart and my humanity, or are they just attracted to my social power, my status, where I rank in the hierarchy, because power has its own allure,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is not necessarily this individual, heart connection.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, it's a whole journey, I think, with really looking at these. Like, I mean, I don't know how you all feel about this. When we start talking about this, like I get sort of spinny. I feel it in my belly. It's a little bit like, oh God, oh God, okay. How long can
Yeah.
we talk about this before like we blow out a circuit or something? It's like pretty taboo stuff,
Oh,
I think.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's really hard to talk about because when we do look at it for a long time, it makes us, um, it kind of cracks the illusion that we have in a way
Mhm.
about how evolved we are. And,
Mm.
like, no, it just feels like in a way it's a little bit shocking and embarrassing to realize that we live in this collective psyche. Like it feels like an illusion too. It feels like this collective dream of, who's better, who's more valuable, who has the power, etc. And like truthfully, it's like we're all gonna die. Like nobody is immortal. It's also kind of a cosmic joke. It's so weird. It's so weird.
Oh,
But I'm glad we're talking about it. And
yep.
I think, yeah, like to kind of bring it back to compersion, like why is this so relevant to the conversation on compersion? I think in a way, compersion is this way out of that collective illusion of separation and hierarchy and like, oh, this person is worth more, this person is not worthy, and it kind of creates a break from all of this bullshit in a
Yes.
way,
Mm,
a relief.
mm, yeah. Mm, love
I'm
it.
just wondering about like, the story that was kind of fed to me when I was younger is one of that there's one person out there, there's a soulmate out there for me. And like
Hmm.
if you have that idea, then I don't know, when in the new space I'm in, the way I look at relationships now is more like I see relationships as having kind of an organic life cycle, and they usually do need end at some point. Um and each new relationship is a new learning opportunity. And I think you know e- being able to experience each person in their uniqueness that way, like that they aren't the one, but they're one for this time and for this learning opportunity. And honestly, like, if it ends, I know I'll be okay too. Like I'm in a different space around this where feeling like okay with the ending of a relationship too.
Yeah.
Which
Which is another great I mean, I think that abundance mindset, like that's again where that comes in. Like when I hear you say the being okay with something ending, what
Mhm.
comes up for me is I'm like, well, she must be in a great place of really feeling abundant and feeling confident that, you know, that ending isn't going to bring this contraction and this scarcity and, you know, this, I mean, it may be uncomfortable or painful or whatever, but you know, you have some sense of that you're going to be okay and that there will be more ways for your needs to be met, and how beautiful that is. Like what a wonderful through line that is, that sense of abundance.
Mhm.
We had a lovely comment on Facebook, someone who said, meeting my metas and seeing their adoration for my partners is often really soothing for me.
Aw.
And you know, I was really appreciating how sweet that would probably be, of like having that shared reality. I don't know that I have had that, you know, exact experience, but I can imagine, I think, how that would be. That sounds really sweet.
Mm-hmm. Like the idea of a positive relational feedback loop.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're on the same team. We're both adoring this person. And so therefore, like, I feel like I'm kin with you because
Right.
we're doing the same thing. We're adoring this person. So I love you because you love them. And then they love me. Like there's
Mhm.
this feedback loop happening.
Yeah. I recently actually went out to dinner with two of my Cleveland loves, and they got to meet each other, and it
Aw.
felt really good, you know, for them
Mm.
and they liked each other, and you know,
Were they both, were either one of them like nervous about it ahead of time, or
a
how
little
was
bit,
the
yeah, I think
little
so.
bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I think it's very positive when that then can happen. So
Yeah. Oh wow. I'm just applauding the courage of that and the radicalness of it. Like it gets me
it did feel a little.
excited. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And
sure.
the
I'm sure.
transgressive nature of it. Like, you know, that's like crossing so many social taboos right there. So it gets me a
I'd
little
imagine
excited.
in where Maria is in San Francisco area.
Right.
Not that unusual.
Not as weird out there yet.
True, we're so lucky here.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends where, of course, it's still a small minority of people who are
Mhm.
non-monogamous, and it's, you know, like most companies might not want their
Right.
employee to bring 2, 3, 4 people to the Christmas party. Unfortunately, there's still definitely discrimination everywhere. Like when you start looking at what we call, like in the jargon, mononormativity, the idea that
Mm,
monogamy is the only valid choice and it's assumed.
mhm.
Mhm.
It's everywhere. I mean, even in a place like the Bay Area, like, I mean, I think in my dream and aspiration, being polyamorous in, you know, 10, 20 years is going to be more like what it is to be LGBTQ
Yeah.
right now,
Okay.
which is,
Will be.
there's still widespread discrimination, but it's a lot more accepted. Like you can go to the Christmas party with your same gender partner, and it's not like, at least here in this part of the country, it's not really um, looked down upon. So I hope that non-monogamy is gonna follow the same path.
Mm, mm,
It seems to be.
I
yeah.
think
And
so.
Yeah.
you know, I really love when people speak about non-monogamy too, in terms of, um, you know, kind of expanding the definition of it, in terms of it's not just about necessarily having numerous sexual partners, right? It's about having maybe numerous intimate partners. Like, for example, you know, there's definitely people in my life that I build, like collaborate with intimately, or create something together with intimately, which is not at all a sexual relationship, but it feels, there is this sense of deep partnership and sometimes deep spiritual partnership with that person. And I think expanding the definition of non-monogamy to even include those types of relationships. I mean, they might not be someone I'm bringing to a Christmas party, so it's not necessarily going to help like change that sort of social norm around it. But I think in a way it would,
Yeah.
because if people understood that intimacy is something that can be shared with people who are, it's not about sex necessarily. Like that was one of my biggest things after my divorce, that I realized that the partnership that I was the saddest about wasn't actually the sexual and romantic loss of partnership. It was the spiritual partnership. And I first kind of redeveloped it with my friend Lisa, because she and I were working really closely together in my coffee company at the time. And I just remember feeling this sense of like deep satisfaction, like I have found a new spiritual partner and life is gonna be okay. Like there are new partners coming for me. Because at that point I was very much in this scarcity mentality around sex. Because I literally thought I was never gonna have sex again. I was like, my sex life is over. I'm divorced. Like, just give up now. Like, I mean, really, I was totally convinced of this. And so Lisa coming along and becoming a new spiritual partner for me made me think, oh, okay, so maybe sex isn't out of the question with other people. It's I mean, it was kind of this like cascade effect after that. So yeah, it was deeply healing for me. So I like to expand that non-monogamy thing to include kind of non-sexual partnerships also, to help expand people's understanding of what that really means and of intimacy in general, I think.
I'll say that Gideon, my love in Israel, he's an anarchist by political philosophy, and he considers himself a relationship anarchist. So within the world of consensual non-monogamy, in the relationship anarchists, they kind of are what you're describing, what they say, why does a romantic partner rank higher than a good friend or a spiritual partner? Like what is it that makes us think this is? So in the relationship anarchy world, they try to like not have hierarchies around that division as well.
Yeah. I love that.
I love that too. I mean, we do grow up with the idea that the partner, should be everything to us. It should be our lover. It should be our, like Esther Perel would say, like, oh, it should be our confidant. It should give us the passion and the stability, and it should be our friend. And that's so much pressure to put on one person. And it does derive so directly from our system of private property and patriarchy, and it has such a historical root, to have this dyadic model of love, where love is only with one person.
Yes.
And it's arbitrary in a way. Like it's, we've evolved to take that for granted, but going forward, we don't have to take that for granted anymore. Like that's no longer the thing that's going to help our species evolve to the next stage. I think we have to start again to think about love in a more encompassing way, where community and friendship and familial love, like all forms of love, all relationships can and do have equal importance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm realizing we've got like another, 20 minutes, or we could even end early if we feel like we're coming to a pause, but I wanted to just check in with especially Allison and April and maybe Cam, and if any of y'all have questions or thoughts, that things that have come up that seemed interesting that maybe we want to come back to, or even experiences to share along this, I'd love to, y'all can chime in. if you'd like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or Carly, if you've got more questions. Yeah, April, anything you want to pop on and say? It looks like you're done making your dinner.
Yeah, and done eating it too.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been really fabulous. I really feel like you have, Marie and Sarah, you've touched on a lot of the aspects. It just keeps coming back though, this piece of society and how we've been programmed. And unfortunately with media, and it's been for centuries, right? That, you know, this idea of competition, and especially like in regards to beauty and attractiveness, and industries that are specifically playing on that insecurity that we all have as human beings. I'm not enough, I'm not attractive, I'm lacking in some way. So there's a lot of obstacles that we as human beings in societies, because different societies have different, you know, aspects of this to overcome. But I think it's important to recognize those obstacles, especially if you're somebody who wants to learn and engender compersion and learn how to do that. The other piece, relating back to Marie, when you were saying about going on like your soul journey of really coming into who you are as a human being, as a spiritual person. And I I think I work as a psychotherapist, so I'm always going into this. So trauma, trauma is such a horrible, debilitating piece to our humanity for each of us. So I just wanted to acknowledge that for individuals who have a trauma history, there are obstacles that may be more to look at, more pieces, and that this is not something that's a simple, easy thing to do. And we got to deprogram ourselves from, you know, how we've been socially trained. But it is possible, just like it's possible to recover from trauma, and whatever that looks like. But to just be able to acknowledge and know that that is a relevant piece, and to be very gentle, all of us, with ourselves, if we decide that we want to take this path, or if we decide this is just not a good fit for us, this is just not going to be, and that's okay too, you know. But to just really know, like, yourself and what fits, and to be able to communicate that with your partner or partners. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, April.
thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, super great
This-
points.
Reminds me that I'm going to put a plug in the chat for this workshop by this teacher who's out of Canada, Clementine Morrigan. She has this workshop. It's, as my friend Corwin says, that is criminally underpriced. It's $26 Canadian, like very cheap. And she has a tremendous amount of resources and research actually in there to support exactly what April was bringing up about how trauma informs our and shapes our experience of polyamory and so many things in life, of course, but you know, specifically like how we navigate. She doesn't really talk about compersion exactly, but she talks about, like, you know, down regulating the nervous system after you've been triggered, and, you know, polyvagal theory, and really understanding how trauma literally gets in the way of, well, and I don't know, gets in the way is almost like saying that it's something that, I mean, sure, in an ideal world, we'd find a way to not have it be there, but trauma is just part of life. And so just how to navigate it and how to find a way to, like April was saying, you know, find the configurations and the connections that work for us, and that kind of, yeah, are as little triggers as possible, or, you know, when we do get triggered, how to deal with them. So a resource that I've really appreciated over the years.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much, April, for that comment. I thought this was so important to bring into the conversation
Yeah.
and to also be crystal clear, that polyamory or non-monogamy is not something that everyone should aspire to, or, it's not spiritually superior, or it's really, like a choice that some people make that, for them it works better. And for people who really decide from a place of freedom instead of a place of default that monogamy works better for where they're at and what kind of security and what kind of context they need to create to be able to feel fully themselves. I don't see a hierarchy there too, and it's easy to somehow give that impression in those kinds of conversations, and I want to make sure we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right, ladies. Well, any other like final questions? I think it's okay if we wrap up a few minutes early if we're feeling, I mean, we covered a lot of ground there. We need to just kind of go
Yes.
take some deep breaths and digest maybe.
Mm.
Maybe we can wrap up too with like where to find Marie. Yeah, in fact, Marie, we can put, how about if I put your
And
put
you
your-
should talk
your
about
website in?
the workshop the two of you are doing next.
Oh, right. Yeah. Some of the
Yes.
stuff that we have upcoming. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not necessarily about compersion, but
Right.
well, unless there is anything specifically about this that you have coming up. I haven't looked at your offerings that you have coming up. We can talk about the
Oh, yeah.
ecosexuality thing, but if there's
Mhm.
anything else that you want to plug while we're on here, Marie.
Well, in terms of compersion, I do have another conversation coming up on a Facebook Live. So
Okay.
check out my page. It's with another coach named Ananya Harvey, and it's going to happen, I think, the 21st of this month on a Friday.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
if you want, more conversation about compersion, that's happening. And I also have a website called whatiscompersion.com,
Ah, right.
where I have all of the resources that I found through my research about compersion. I have a whole list, and I also have my dissertation. And I also have some blogs from me and other people about different aspects of compersion. So that's really a great repository of resources on compersion. And I also do coaching. So if anyone wants coaching around relationships in general, so I'm a dating and relationship coach, whether people are monogamous, non-monogamous, or somewhere in between, or navigating the space in between, I'm happy to help. So my coaching website is loveinsight-dating.com.
Here, I'll try
So,
and put it in the, say it again, Marie.
so
It's
loveinsight-dating.com. And I do 30-minute free introductory sessions for anyone who is interested in
Okay.
potentially working with me as a coach.
great. We did have an interesting question from Lido on Facebook, which is any advice for men on how to show compersion towards their female partner? So we could potentially cover that. And then, and we got a question from in the chat too. So maybe we can cover those couple, and then I'm happy to, we can wrap up with some chat about
Yeah,
our
totally.
upcoming ecosexuality offerings. So, but those are some couple of juicy questions.
So Lido, I'm a little bit curious about that question. Like, how can a male partner show compersion to their female partner? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is if you're feeling it, she's gonna feel it too. So I don't know that there's something specific that you would need to do to, I mean, I would talk about it. I would say,
Yeah,
like,
it's not really about even showing it. Like it's,
I mean, if you're feeling it, that's amazing, and she's gonna know it. So you're gonna probably spontaneously want to support her and tell her like it is. So I'm curious if there is any more to that question.
But we'll
Maybe
see if
Lito wants to.
he posts any more about this. But we've got this other, I don't know, Marie, if you can see this other question in the chat.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting one. Here, I'll
Okay.
read it. I'll read it out loud and then you can answer.
Cool.
Marie, you mentioned Webster's and getting compersion into the dictionary. Even as I type, compersion is highlighted as red, meaning it isn't registering as a real word. That happened to me a lot when I text you about it. It like, you know, the autocorrect doesn't recognize it. I think it,
Totally.
interestingly enough, it corrects it into the word comparison,
Uh-huh.
which is interesting, right? Like that's very symbolic. Anyway, do you feel that compersion would be able to spread more freely if we had even more words within this category? In other words, how much of your work would you attribute to the evolution of the language around compersion? It's an interesting question.
Well, yes, I mean, definitely there is a reality where the way we construct reality and our emotional landscapes is based on the words that we have available to describe them. So I don't know if we need even more words. I think we do. I mean, take just the word love. You know, in English, there's the word love that can mean so many things. It can mean love that you have for your parents, your children, your lovers, erotic love, universal love towards God and the universe. So there's so many more words in Greek, for example, to describe love. They have six or nine, I can't remember, 6 or 9 different words for love. And I think that can be helpful to our psyche to remember, like, okay, love is not just one thing. So I wish we had more words. It's one of my goals from my compersion research to make us closer to having that word to be in the dictionary, so that we can feel more of it. Sometimes just knowing the word, knowing the concept can help us actually manifest that reality or come closer to it. And how much of your work would you attribute to the evolution of the language around compersion? I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I don't know if you can specify, like how much of my work I would attribute to the evolution of the language. Yeah, can you say more about that? Or did I answer it already?
So yeah, maybe more in the chat if you got more on it, or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we can come back to that question, and let me toggle back to Lito's question, because he wrote more in Facebook, which is, so his question was really about just feeling compersion. So advice on how to feel compersion, which in a way I think is like the whole, I mean, just kind of got to recap the whole the whole talk, but maybe the question is more around, because I think I spoke at least around like ways that, well, I think it's really about from one of the first steps, right, is shifting from this scarcity to abundance. I don't know if that's a first step. That's a whole practice around how to shift from scarcity to abundance. So yeah.
I mean, I think maybe to break it down, you know, and make like a couple different departments. Like one is reducing the sense of threat. And that can be done by asking for reassurance and having a lot of verbal communication around it. You know, maybe you feel like you need to hear from your lover or your partner that you really matter, and to hear more words of affirmation. Maybe you need more quality time. Like maybe it's one of those love languages that you might need more of to feel less like your relationship is under threat. So figure out what you need to reduce the sense of threat and ask for that. It's always wonderful to ask for what we need. And then there's also trying to tune into her joy and how she's growing from other relationships. I think that there's a way where we can feel compersion by remembering, like, okay, maybe I'm benefiting from my partner's growth with somebody else. They're becoming more of who they are, And loving that person means loving all of who they are. So if someone else comes along and ignites a part of her that might not have been ignited otherwise, it's not because you're deficient. Like nobody can ignite the whole of one person. This is why we have the whole humanity, to ignite one another in so many different facets.
Love that. Yeah.
So tune into the fact that you get a more wholesome, more ignited partner as a result of her other connections with other people, and see if that can help along
Wow.
with reducing the sense of threat.
I love that. Wow. Marie, you're good. That was great.
I hope it works.
Lito, I hope you heard that.
Yeah.
If you can, give us your thoughts. We're only going to be on here for another 4 minutes, though. I would have cut us off at 9:30. So. But hopefully we'll get some comments before then from him. Yeah, April.
I just wanted to put a tag on that, and that was really, really well summed up and and said. Absolutely. And I know I can relate to that in a relationship, poly relationship I'm with. And we talk all the time, the three of us, about how much we are each growing because of what we are contributing, because we're two different people, right? Myself and the metamorph, and it's just amazing. And you know, we contribute so much to that. And the one other piece is the attunement of being able to have empathy for another person, whether it's your partner, your metamorph, or you know, whomever. That's a huge part of being able to access compersion, is to be able to empathize deeply with other people. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. Actually, one of my research participants said that compersion is intimate empathy with cultural expectations removed.
Wow.
Oh,
Interesting.
wait, say that again.
Compersion is intimate empathy with cultural expectations removed.
Okay, I'm gonna write that in the chat because I put another definition. Compersion is intimate empathy with cultural expectations removed.
Yeah, that was in the
Wow.
words of one participant, which I feel like really resonate with what April just said, like that kind of attunement.
Love that. Cool. Great. Oh, and Lito says that he heard the response and that it landed. He said
Cool.
it makes so much sense, and thank you. So
Oh, yay.
yeah, I love that answer. That was great. If nothing else comes from this replay, or some, like, I hope people get that little nugget, because that was a good one. Yeah.
Nice.
Will this recording be accessible to everyone? It'll definitely be on my Facebook page. Yeah. And then I'll have I can send you all who registered the link to, this Zoom one too, so that you'll have it. So we missed, the very beginning, but I think we got most of it, got the majority of it. So yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
I'm excited to share it.
Yes. So I put the link on Facebook for, this upcoming thing that Marie and I are hosting on ecosexuality, which, we could fit, and I put it here in this chat too. It's a couple-hour workshop that we're doing a couple Sundays from now, which we could kind of frame this as being a practice for shifting into compersion, because it does help when you really expand your sense of erotic abundance to include the wonderful range and the abundance and the majesty of nature, and all these different forms of biological abundance and beauty. So so that's what we'll be focusing on in that workshop, and giving people a lived experience of that, hopefully. So yeah,
I'm so looking forward to that. I just
it'll be real
love,
fun.
when I first heard the word ecosexuality, something in me just lit up. I was like, wow, yes, like I have been feeling this erotic connection with nature for pretty much my whole life.
Yes.
again, like having a word for things, it can be so powerful to give ourselves a permission to experience it for what it is,
Yeah.
and to look at our own eroticism outside of the little mold, of
Mhm.
one-on-one human relationship
Yeah.
and couple-centric eroticism. And it's
Yeah.
really bigger than that, and it's so liberating to give ourselves permission to experience it as bigger than that.
Yep. Yeah. And I am just, if, for those of you who are interested in doing a deeper dive with this, and I need to have this all ready on, it's on my website, but I have to fix the description a little bit, but I have it on there as kind of a placeholder, that I am doing a full weekend workshop here at my land in Kentucky, an ecosexual, retreat and workshop, the weekend of April 20th, I think. I've got it on the calendar. So yeah, we did one last year in the summer, and it, just so fun and so frolicking and abundant and all the things. And yeah, we're doing another one in April. So hopefully it'll be warm enough. It'll be interesting to, April's a little pushing it here in Kentucky, but hopefully we can generate our own heat. So, yeah. All right, dears. Oh, it's
Right.
after 9:30. So
Right.
thank you all
Yeah,
for
thank
being
you.
here. Thank you, Marie, for bringing this wonderful area of study and your wisdom and covering all of this ground with us. And thank you, Carly, for your wonderful questions and sharing your story and your heart with us. So appreciate both of you.
Yay!
Thank you for inviting.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Really
Thank you.
appreciating the ease, it's just so fun
Mhm.
to flow through this with both of you. And thank you, April, for bringing your great
Yeah.
questions and
Yes.
enthusiasm.
Mhm.
And Allison and Cam and and all the people who showed up on Facebook too with your questions. Yeah, Lido says swaha. Love it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks,
Okay.
Sarah, for putting this together, and
Yes, my
Carly for being
pleasure.
part of it. I
Pleasure.
loved
Yeah.
your presence.
Thank you.
And April, too. Thank you so much for your questions, and
Yeah.
thanks for being here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, dears.
Okay.
Well, till
Good night,
next
Great,
time.
thank you.
Yes. All right. Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Good
Mwah.
night.
Much
Good
love.
night. Good night.